My name is Vivian Kirkpatrick Pilger, and I am a resident of the county, but I own property in the city, and I also have a relative who has a business in the city, a very close relative. And I don't represent that business, but I'm also the president of the Josephine County Republican Women, and we have a long history of opposing taxes. At any rate, this sounds like a well thought out plan to get all the people in the city who already vote for taxes to vote for this tax to spread the damages of what 80% of the crime is in the city, to spread it out to the people who live rurally who have to come here and shop, which I don't think is a very nice thing to do. And I don't appreciate it. I personally will drive to Medford to get my supplies and to buy whatever I need to buy. And I won't mind doing that because of my principles. So that's how I feel about it. The other question I have is, if someone goes into, say, the local Safeway and they buy something at the deli and then they buy unprepared food, is the deli food going to be taxed versus the non-deli food?
My name's Bill Barkley, and my wife and I are fairly recent residents of the county of Josephine County, live out on Stringer Gap. We went through the process of observing this last proposed levy and got into a little bit of the history, and so I just want to say tonight I applaud the task force efforts here. I think it's regrettable that it took 5 failed levies, on property tax to start thinking out of the box, but I think you guys have done that. And I think this is very, very creative. And I think it's very, very equitable. So I think from my standpoint, I voted against the property tax levy. I would absolutely vote for this. And I think most of my friends and colleagues that live out in the county would do likewise. Quite confident about that. I just have one other question, and it has to do with the deliverables, okay? And you may have heard that term come up before. But I noticed that 1.75% would translate into about 8 million, okay? So I guess my question is, where's the breakdown on how the 8 million would be spent, and why not 10 million, or why not 6 million? In other words, you go down to a dealership, you can buy a car, it has these options, or you can get one that's a little more expensive, it has more, so what do we get? And I think it'd be really important as part of this exercise to articulate, for the community, what does this buy you, okay? In some measure of detail, because I think that was lacking, frankly, in this last property tax levy. There's too many generalities.
Gift Gates, city resident, Gates Furniture. I was really surprised. I called Evergreen Bank Day to ask one of the staff members to see if they could research this out for me. I was curious about what percentage of people rent versus own homes in Grants Pass, i.e., what percentage of people pay property tax and what percentage of people don't because they rent, 50%. So personally, of course, as a business, you get sensitive about sales taxes and you're never thrilled about them. But I also really, for our business, we want people to move to Josephine County, into the city, into the county. They buy furniture. It's good for us. And with not enough law enforcement, I'm worried about how many people may not move here. But back to the point, I would honestly leave the safety levy in place because you're really penalizing lower income people. I assume the people renting are lower income people. It's an assumption, but I just assume that if they don't own property, they may not be wealthy enough to have the property. They have no savings. Okay, they don't pay that tax levy, so there's no savings for them. So I would recommend that we leave the 1.74, $1.74 in place, reduce the sales tax to 1%, keep your cap on it. I think the county residents would probably appreciate that more than 1.75. But I just worry about hitting the lower income people with a double whammy. So they pay the 1.75 and there's no savings for them.
Good evening, everybody. Mark Selig. I live in Selma, Oregon for 20 years. There was an article yesterday in Courier, USA Today article. It said 24% of the people in Grants Pass are on food stamps. It's the 3rd worst city in the United States as far as income gap. This proposal will have no benefit at all to renters. It'll hurt them. It'll further marginalize them. I'm curious what percentage is renters and what percentage is property owners. That USA article is very revealing as to the income in this county. I urge everybody in this room who lives here to run for city council because of what this council is trying to do. They're of one mind. The city council 2 years ago did a very good thing. It put $1 million of their money out for jail beds. You know what this city is worth? $90 million. That's 1/90th of what they're worth. Why they can't continue to do that, I don't know. City residents are held hostage. They can't go to Medford unless you're like Vivian, and we'll do it out of principle, which I probably would do living in Selma. Now, one last thing I want to say. The city of Grants Pass wants to put this on the ballot. It doesn't abide by things that are on the ballot. Measure 91, the marijuana initiative, they don't abide by what state law says. In fact, if the city allowed for dispensaries in this town, they would get 20% tax from that alone. They don't want to do that, and that's the #1 industry. So lastly, I want everybody in this room, when the vote comes up for this, which is a foregone conclusion, it's going to be on the ballot, show them that you don't want any more taxes. You don't want to marginalize the people in this town even further. Thank you.
Rika Brown, resident of Grants Pass, and I'm a natural gardener. I guess I will be one of the services that will be charging sales tax. And I have to point out that renters pay for property tax in their rent, and we can at least hope that landlords will drop the rent a little bit. But I have customers inside the city, outside the city, and one that's over in Lincoln City. Do they all pay sales tax on my services?
Yeah, my name's Bob Drake. I own Bob Drake Reproductions. I've been here about 36 years in Grants Pass. I moved out of LA because they taxed me to death. Came to Grants Pass, love it. I'm pro-Southern Oregon. Nobody likes taxes. City of Grants Pass, when I first built my building up on Washington, the north end, they fought me. Now they want me. They want my tax, I pay 8,000, 6,000, 8,000 hours per building. I own 3 buildings, and a lot I don't know what I pay for. My property's broken into 3 times already. Made a mess of everything. I'm against sales tax because the burden's on me to, get the money from people that buy across the counter. I propose if the jail wants, do what the Army does, they call it hot cots, 8 on, 8 off, 24 hours on the clock. How about that? It's just tough. Business is tough. I think, what happens when you buy a CNC machine that costs $150,000? Is there going to be sales tax on that? That's a lot of money for us to buy. What happens? California's got a use tax. If you buy software for $100,000, you bring it into the state. Is there a use tax? California's got use tax. So those are my 2 questions. Use tax, that software you buy out of state, you bring in, and also these large ticket items that I would buy as well.
My name is Frank Wright, and I'm one of the owners of the kitchen company. And it's really hard to conduct a business in Grants Pass, and one of the reasons is it's kind of a small population base. And so one of the things that our business depends on is being able to bring people in from out of the area, primarily Jackson County and Douglas County and the coast. And I've already heard from several customers who have gotten wind of this sales tax that said they will make a special point to not shop in Grants Pass should this pass. And I can tell you that if I have to rely on the small community here to support my business, I don't believe I can make it. I depend on people coming from other areas, and it's like, welcome to Grants Pass, the only city in the state of Oregon where you have to pay more for things.
Hello, my name is Joe Ridenauer. I'm a city resident. I have voted against the past levies because I didn't think it was fair to punish, literally, property owners when I know Mr. Gates had kind of a low number. Actually, I think renters are actually more like 63% of the population here. But I do know that this is a big travel town as well, and I didn't ever think it was fair that people coming through weren't really being obligated to pay what they were using here. Anyway, but part of my point was, since this would be a votable measure to vote in, my first question is this votable to retract it? Second question, more of a comment, was that there's a lot of great examples here about exemptions, but not any examples of what's really being included in the tax. I think it would have been great to see some of the really common stuff that's going to add up to that $8 million number that people will be hit with, particularly the percentage against the $1,000 cars, obviously, but other things that people will be hit every day. And the last comment I had was if the committee had any consideration about doing a combination, for me, example, I wouldn't mind continuing to paying the little utility fee on my water bill in combination with something else, but just straight across sales tax might be a little too much for me to consider. And actually, one last thing I'm thinking about now is, because this is such a travel town, was there consideration just to limiting it to, again, just hotels and eateries, restaurants, because that will accommodate, a huge amount of business that comes through summertime. Thank you.
My name is Jim Gower. I'm a resident of the county, and I think this is a spectacular idea. It's time that we looked at including everybody in the county in how we handle our income and our fees and what have you. I heard the complaints about low-income people not paying taxes on their rentals. Well, they pay taxes. We have income property, and they pay taxes, believe me. It's built into their rental rates. You'd be foolish not to do that because you have to pay the taxes yourself. They just don't know how much, as a rule. As far as low-income people being hurt by that 1.75% fee, that's 15 cents on a pack of cigarettes. How many low-income people are operating in that margin? Same way with beer. Most of the low-income people I know, those are the two staples. But but the thing that is so obvious to me is all this discussion says that what we're addressing is symptoms of a problem, not the problem itself. I think the problem itself is countywide. It's a lack of self-image for the county. People in Grants Pass are Grants Pass people. People in Selma are Selma people. People in Cave Junction. The county is an entity. And if we don't build some kind of structure, have some kind of rapport with everybody within the county, and be working towards that objective, I think everything we're doing is just a patch. It's addressing the symptom and letting the disease kill us. So.
Thank you. My name's Carol Johnston, and I would like to take exception to one of the things that the mayor said, which is we folks that live in the county do care, but we have a different way of looking at things than people who live in the city, and I think you'll find that throughout every state in the country, is city people vote one way and county people vote another. I think what we're most concerned about in the county, the people that we know, we want law enforcement, but we want the money that's already allocated to be spent properly, and we want it to be very transparent in the way it's being spent, and we're not seeing that. So why would we allocate more money if we don't know what you're going to do with it or how you're going to do it or whether you're going to do a good job with it? I certainly wouldn't give more to my children if I didn't know what they were doing with it or if they were doing a good job with it. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at, the transparency of how you're spending the money that you have now, the $1 million+ grant money that the department has on top of what they already have to work with needs to be very transparent, and it's not. And so because of that, a lot of us in the county, maybe not everyone, but a lot of us in the county feel that that needs to be on the plate first Let's do some housekeeping. Let's do some cleaning. Let's figure out what we're doing with the money we have now, and we're not wasting it before we get more on our plate to play with.
My name is Bob Johnston. I live in the county. I don't think I can be as eloquent as my wife here, but I have some comments to make. And before somebody wants to label me as anti-law enforcement, I'm 30 years retired as a police officer, and I spent a lot of my time working with the union and working with the county, and I saw directly problems with funding. But I can tell you a couple things here. What I see here that I'm a little bit offended by is this presentation tries to draw a line between city residents and county residents and say the city, not directly but indirectly in what they say, that the city people are paying more toward law enforcement than the county people, and that's not fair. Well, when 80% of the crime is committed in the city, I think the city should pay a bigger pay. And I can tell you that the department that I work for a sheriff's department, the cities, both cities and the county I work for, paid bed fees. Every time somebody was brought in, they paid a fee for that person for the county to maintain them. That's what the city's doing now, and that's what they should do. If they're occupying the majority of the beds in the jail, they should be paying for those beds. What I'm offended by here is the city is trying to force a tax on every resident of the county, and then when the county 4 times in a row said, we don't want any more taxes. Then on top of that, they're going to kick back to the city residents 20% or 2% of their property tax to ensure that they vote for this measure. But there's a bill coming up, HJR 21 in the state, that is going to set property taxes in every county in this state at 2%. And that bill's going to probably pass because already a majority of the counties pay over 2%. Well, they're going to vote for it because it isn't going to raise their taxes. So then what's going to happen? You're going to be paying this sales tax, and Josephine County is going to have a minimum tax of 2% on all the property in Josephine County. That needs to be a primary issue here. And then what I've heard here also is that right now we're not really in a crisis. So why are we doing this? For the future? Well, let's see what HJR 21 does, because if that bill passes, Josephine County will have more than enough money to fund all of its jail facilities. So I think we need to take a look back at this. And then the last thing that bothers me here is you people up here have made it very clear that this is going to go on the ballot. Doesn't matter what we say here tonight. This is going to go on the ballot. And the only people that are going to get to vote for it, my understanding, you can tell me if I'm wrong, are the people that live in the city of Grants Pass. But I'm going to have to pay the sales tax. Well, I'm not, because I'm going to Medford. Thank you.
My name is Scott Draper, and I am a resident of the city, and I do operate a business within the city. And I agree with my fellow county resident here on several things, and primarily that this is more of a state issue. I don't think that it almost seems like that we feel that there's some perceived bad guy in the county, and so and that's dad, and now the son is going to make up for the sins of the father and do all this stuff. I have a question on how we got from, and Darren had said, Mayor Fowler had said that it was translated because of the vote that we saw there 4 or 5 times in a row, where the majority, sometimes significant majority of city voters said, yes, we want to pay for this through a property tax. Where and how did we get a translation that meant we wanted to think outside the box? In other words, have you looked at, I mean, we still have 2 years of what the voters said, how we want to pay for this, and then after that, the voters already said, the city voters said clearly they wanted to pay $1.40 more. Now that was for some county stuff too, so maybe it's not $1.40, maybe it's 40 cents or 50. Has that been looked at? That would be my primary question. Then, have you found an example of this anywhere in our country? I know you said outside the box. It looks like to me, I looked and I couldn't find anything of an example. And I know you're using as an example other states. You'd even mentioned, Jay, compared to other states. This isn't a state sales tax. It's a very different thing when you're talking borders the size that we have. I think that has to be considered. Those would be my two primary questions. And I do have to say thank you for the effort. I get it. I get that we're a little bit in panic mode here. I don't think necessarily we have to be, but I get the effort and the spirit of this, and I appreciate it.
My name is Rick Hernandez. I am not a resident of Grants Pass. And when I look here on the draft proposal, I see that the anticipated revenue is a little over $8 million. When I whip out my calculator and divide $8 million by 1.75%, that translates to $460 million of commerce alone. But my question actually is anticipated revenue. Can you break down the costs associated with collecting the tax, administrating the tax, and sending that money to the different agencies, and how that will be done? Because I think $8 million of revenue, but there will be overhead over and above that that's not really addressed here in this draft proposal that I think really needs to be brought out and shown, because that will be an infrastructure that will need to be continued and for this tax. And if there was a term limit on it, then that would be an infrastructure that would have to be built up and then maybe suddenly dismantled. So there would be a cost associated with that. So the full costs for this have not really been broken out and revealed so far. So please.
I'm sorry, yes. My name's Lorraine Rafferty, and I live in the county. My husband and I have a business in the city, and what actually Jim thought of this, and what he'd been wondering is if the city would be able to open, if this does actually get on the ballot, and it is something that's actually voted on, does the city have the ability to say that anyone who owns a business in the city will have a vote? Because, as business owners who don't live in the city, we don't have a say. And we're in the county. And so our question is, could it be opened up so that business owners, I'm sure there's a lot of small business owners in the city, that do live in the county. And I was just wondering if that could be open to allow us to have a say on this. And, I agree with Mr. Bob Drake over there who, commenting that it's really going to be a hassle just to, for the business owner to collect the money. And then some of the businesses, including some of the big ones, Home Depot, Diamond, and even our little business, we do trade that, what could be considered retail and wholesale in the sense that we are selling some of our product to people that take that product and make something and resell it. And so, on Home Depot, all the construction, all that I would think would go into that because they're going to take that product and remake something out of it. And maybe you didn't take that out of your figures, I don't know, but for the business to take the time and have to differentiate and ask the customer and say, well, are you buying this in order to take the product and make something and sell it to somebody else, or are you buying this for yourself? How do you deal with all that?
My name is Mark Hutto. I actually live in Medford, but I own a company, a coin and jewelry shop here in town on 6th Street, and I also own one in Ashland. I was in Ashland back in the 90s when they passed the mills tax, and there was a very good reason they didn't pass the sales tax. It's because it would destroy the local economy. My shop in Ashland does 30% of its business because people come in from California to avoid the sales tax. Once you pass the sales tax, it never goes away. Another thing, this idea of pitting Oregonians against each other, that is property owners against business owners, was discussed years ago in the Ways and Means Committee in the state of Oregon. They nixed it because it's a very, very bad idea. There's no economist, I know by looking at this because I'm an economist, I went to school for international economics. No one has looked at this to see the damage it's going to do. And it's also very divisive. You hear the comments around the room, people are already very angry at each other. Now, I work in a business that works on 1% and 2% margins. When someone comes in my shop and asks me what the cost of this gold bar is, It's $40 over the cost of gold. With this tax, it's going to be $157 over the cost of gold. Today, in my shop alone, over a 5-cent difference in cost on silver rounds, I had 2 customers walk out. So yes, it's going to make a difference. A gentleman over here said we don't have a vote. Yeah, we do. I have plenty of money. I can move 10 feet right outside the city. I can create an information kiosk within the city, and I can move the purchasing center right out the city. This is not a fishbowl. People can leave this area and they can shop. We are also in the internet age, okay? People can go online and shop. And having been in many different retail venues and having just closed a business that was going to invest $500,000 in the state of Oregon and create 30 new jobs, really good jobs that the legislature destroyed, I know that people shop online, and they'll shop online for as little as a $5 difference. So if you want to step and open this door because it sounds good temporarily, you're going to destroy Grants Pass. And I opened a shop here because I love this city. The people here are fantastic people. I love these people. And the town, if we lose just 6 shops in the downtown area of Grants Pass, it's going to become a ghost town again like it was 5 years ago. The city is starting to move forward. It's better than Medford. It's way better than Medford, and we should keep it that way. And people will shop in Medford because of this tax, not just on principle, but also on cost, because a lot of people have to go to Medford anyway. I'm probably near my 3 minutes. I don't want to hog too much time, but thank you very much.